tiny island in Southeast Asia, but to the world economy, it is a powerhouse to be reckoned with. Today I'll be informing you on how such a small country plays such a large role in the world, and how it's become one of the leaders in big business and diversity. There's so much to talk about in regards to Singapore. You could spend days just researching its economy, but I'm going to present my research to you on more broad subjects so that one may understand the wonderful culture that is the Republic of Singapore. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the geography and the economy of Singapore. Next, I'll speak on its diverse culture. And lastly, I'll present to you the overall attitude of its people and how they communicate with each other. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the makeup of Singapore and what makes its economy tick. The Republic of Singapore is a small island with one of the top 5 busiest ports in the world. Singapore's location is 85 miles north of the equator, so it allows it to intercept many air and sea trade routes. According to a section of Cultures of the World, Singapore is one of the 4 Asian tigers, along with Hong Kong, South Korea, and Taiwan, and has experienced advanced economic growth since the 1960s. Singapore has a business-friendly environment, and its economy relies heavily on its exports. And it's well known for its nearly corruption-free government. But even though Singapore lacks many natural resources, it considers its people as its most important resource. Singapore's economy has also affected the makeup of the country itself. According to a section of Cultures of the World, Singapore is heavily urbanized with very little of the native land makeup remaining, which has forced most of the island to build up. Because it is located so close to the equator, Singapore has a tropical rainforest climate year-round and lacks any significant seasons. So it's almost always hot and humid there. And according to a section of Cultures of the World, the Singapore government feared that urbanization would lead to an unattractive flat landmass that lacked greenery. So the government makes it a point to build lots of parks and gardens, or green lungs, as they are called. But now that you have some insight on Singapore and how it looks and functions, let me give you some information about its diverse culture. It's very hard to define Singapore's culture at times, so let me explain to you why this is the case. Singapore's population is dominated by more than one type of peoples. According to a section of Cultures of the World, Singapore, 40% of nearly 5 million of the people that live there are foreigners. And most of them are comprised of Chinese, Malays, Indians, and Eurasians. English is the primary language spoken in Singapore, but most of the natives speak Mandarin. Buddhism is the most worshipped religion in Singapore, with Christianity coming in second. And according to the Insider View Singapore Financial Management, because Singapore is so diverse, the government encourages multiculturalism and wants all the main ethnicities to live in peace. Singapore is also full of many exciting culinary and artistic experiences. And according to a section of Cultures of the World, Singapore, the national fruit of Singapore is known as the durian. The durian is a fruit that it has a very custard-like texture and is known for its strong odor. Dining and shopping in Singapore is also considered one of its national pastimes. And the Esplanade Arts Center is a major site for performing arts in Singapore. It's one of the busiest art centers in the world. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the people of Singapore and how they interact with each other. Some of the things that make Singapore so interesting is how its diverse cultures interact with one another. The people of Singapore are very proud and hardworking people, and it shows in everything that they do. According to the Insider View Singapore Financial Management, Singapore has the highest percentage of millionaires in the world. Unfortunately, this also means there's a high power distance amongst its people, with wealth, prestige, and hard work exceeding all else. Singapore has some of the most strict laws and regulations in regard to cleanliness, media, and crime, such as drug trafficking and drug use. with some drug crimes punishable by death. Singapore has one of the lowest drug rates in the world. The people of Singapore communicate in ways that benefit the country as a whole rather than the individual. According to a section of Cultures of the World, Singapore, thoughts and feelings are rarely expressed in Singapore, especially in regards to older generations. And overall, Singapore has a collective society because of the high Asian influence in the country. And even though all this information is a lot to take in about Singapore, who would have ever thought that such a small place would have such an array of interesting facts? And so to review, I first told you about the geography and economy of Singapore. Then I spoke about its diverse culture. And finally, I told you about the overall attitude of its people and how they communicate with each other. So as you can see, Singapore has a lot to offer in such a compact space, and I hope that you have learned just as much as I have about this wonderful place. Thank you for your time.